There is a word in Japanese which describes the situation where humans disappear inexplicably, removed from this earth without anyone noticing. Kamikakushi. Kami means deity. Kakushi means the act of hiding or hidden away. In the old days, people believed that when someone disappeared without a trace, the gods that lived in the mountains, forests, or waters had taken them. Sometimes they return just as inexplicably as they had gone, unharmed. Other times, they're found dead somewhere. Most of the time, though, they just disappear forever. Studio Ghibli lovingly adopted this concept into a classic animated family movie. But the actual history behind the phenomenon is far more sinister. I want to share with you a narrative from my grandpa, who had spent his younger years living in a village in rural Japan. He had been in the hospice for his last couple of years, and it was during one of the last visits I paid him that he shared this experience with me. I'm posting this, half hoping that anyone out there who has heard of this or been through a similar experience will find this and find me. It was something that had bothered my grandpa in his last days, and I truly wish that I could find an explanation on his behalf. I don't know exactly when it happened. He was not able to recall dates clearly, but Grandma later told me that it was way before she'd met him. My best guess, from this and from my grandpa's story, is that it probably happened sometime around the late 1950s. It was one of those types of small villages that are amongst a cluster of villages where they all kind of blend into each other, and no one knew exactly how many district villages there actually were. Only people who lived there could tell them apart. They worshipped gods there, but there weren't any of the common Shinto gods I was familiar with. I think it had to do with the time period back then. People would invite statues of pagan gods into their homes for blessing, out of less than religious reasons, which were usually a blend of deities from different cultures. He said that when he was young, a lot of men were leaving home to find work or better education in Tokyo and the other bigger cities. The economy was flourishing. People started looking forward to a busy urban life, and everyone was always talking about big changes coming this way. Then, on an otherwise completely unremarkable day, a boy from one of the neighboring villages went missing. He remembered when the news spread to his village, and it was after dusk. He was, at the time, deeply disturbed by the timing. It meant that the boy went missing when the sun was going down. They called that time of day Omagatoki, the time of meeting demons. Sundown was a weird time for some people because they believed that's when the doors to the underworld would open and humans would be able to see the otherwise invisible creatures that roamed the night. The boy's mum found some abandoned toys in a field where a vast forest lay just beyond the grass, so they assumed that he had wandered too far and got lost in the trees. A lot of people went looking for him, all night and then all the next day, but they never found the boy. The other kids in my grandpa's village were all saying that it was Kamikakushi, that he was taken from the field because he somehow made the forest gods angry. His dad came back from Kyoto about a week later and organised a search party. But everyone knew by then it was already too late. What happened next got really weird, and I'm not sure if my grandpa even remembered things correctly. But according to him, a couple of days after the dad came back, that entire family vanished from their home. People searched their houses, the surrounding areas, and even went into the forest. But they were gone, and they left everything behind. There was leftover food on the stove, clothes laid out on the mats. Some chicken feed was left outside in the yard, as if they got up in the middle of their chores and walked away from their life. Most of the village people suspected that the dad took his family back to the cities overnight because they didn't want to keep looking for their son anymore. But between the village kids, everything about their disappearance became a creepy legend. The old people at the time, among some of the more superstitious types, prayed by roadside shrines to their gods, asking them to protect the children. The third time it happened to an older girl, a couple of years older than my grandpa. She was getting ready to be married. Her family freaked out and got these exorcists to come who performed some type of elaborate ritual to try and locate the girl. It's a bit unclear what happened there, but people got spooked and they stopped letting their kids play outside, saying that maybe it was an animal attack. It was a pretty big deal for a while, and they looked for signs of large animals coming out of the mountains, but he didn't remember if they'd ever found anything. The only thing he remembered was that the disappearances never stopped. At some point, they just gave up looking for the missing people. It was a weird time back then, because a lot of families were leaving the villages anyways. They'd always say that so-and-so just moved to a big city. They had such and such relatives there who's running some type of small business, and the whole family left to join them. Or, remember that kid from so-and-so's home? They sent him to a school in the city. Most people believed that no one ever went missing. They just simply moved away. It seemed odd that a lot of them left in the middle of the night without taking anything with them, just like the first family did. But people were under some sort of influence of a rapidly changing era, and no one really thought too much about it. That girl who was supposed to get married, my grandpa heard her family eventually left too, but he wasn't sure if they had actually moved or disappeared. These incidents kept on happening in random villages, so people didn't always hear about them. But everyone personally knew at least one or two families that seemingly left all their things behind and vanished overnight. For my grandpa, it was his neighbours. He had been friends with the neighbours' kids since they were little boys. The day before it happened, they were playing outside not far from home, since they both had to be indoors before sundown. As the sky turned orange and the sun a blood red hue, my grandpa thought it's time to go home. He told me that this was when he saw the thing appear on the horizon. It kind of hovered on the gravel road, or it was walking, but because the setting sun was blinding and dyed everything a vague, warm colour, he couldn't tell. He knew it wasn't just a person, because the thing had more than one pair of arms, and they all hung down the sides as it sort of moved across the road and gradually dissipated into the orange air next to the fence outside his friend's house. He didn't fully understand the significance of that moment at the time, so he acted normal and told his friend he was going home. They agreed to go fishing at a nearby creek the next day. Come morning time, my grandpa came out to find his parents in their neighbor's home, and they told him that the neighbors had vanished. His friend, their parents, their siblings, everyone was gone. He remembered hearing his dad say it was weird for them to leave without saying anything, because the two families had been so close. His mother, my great-grandma, became very upset, said that she was going to pray to the shrine they had at home and offer some food to the gods. Later that year, my grandpa's family moved to Tokyo, where he met my grandma, and they eventually relocated to Australia. It was not until he was older that my grandpa realized what he saw that day and why people kept on disappearing in his hometown. He told me that it was because the culturally ambiguous deities they worshipped got used to the offerings and didn't want people to leave the village. The deities they worshipped, they were not proper gods and had no restraints to act benevolent. Kamikakushi was a way for them to keep the humans there, so their incense would never burn out and their offerings never depleted. The cluster of villages are long gone now, replaced by quaint small towns, new developments where people who stayed there lived a peaceful, rustic life. No one knows what happened to the ones who left back in the days. My grandpa, he had considered reaching out to someone back home, asking them about the vanished families, but he never did. I have no idea if he was afraid of what he'd find, or afraid to hear that those people had vanished too. If anyone knows a family member who has had similar experiences, or if you've seen something like this happen, please contact me. I've been looking into Kamikakushi in contemporary times. A lot of them have been well documented and reported on. Some are urban legends, but I'm always looking for more personal accounts.